They say the truth always finds its way to the surface. No matter how deep it's buried. No matter how tightly it's sealed behind smiles, lullabies, and bedtime stories. For 10 years, Daniel believed his mother was just that. His mother. Loving, strong, protective. But one rainy afternoon, a single letter hidden in the attic shattered everything he thought he knew. This is the story of a secret that refused to stay buried, and a boy who learned that sometimes, the people we love most are hiding the darkest truths. Daniel always thought there was something unusual about their house. It wasn't the creaking floorboards or the fact that the clocks never seemed to be in sync. It was more the way his mother would stare at certain spots on the wall for too long. Or how she always changed the subject when he asked about his father. He stopped asking after a while. She made it clear it was a closed chapter, if it had ever been open at all. They lived in an old Victorian house on the outskirts of a quiet town. A house inherited from his grandmother, who'd passed away when Daniel was just a baby. The townspeople often whispered about the place. "That house has stories," the mailman once muttered, handing a stack of letters to Daniel without making eye contact. His mother, Clara, never entertained gossip. She filled their home with warmth, soft yellow lamps, the scent of cinnamon and rosemary, and jazz music humming in the background. She worked from home as an editor, rarely left the property, and never had visitors. To Daniel, she was the center of his world. A little distant sometimes. Yes, but always kind. Always present. At least, physically. But as Daniel grew older, small cracks began to form in the perfect image of their quiet life. It started on his 14th birthday. He'd been searching the attic for an old toy he remembered from years ago. The attic was usually locked, but that day, for some reason, the door wasn't. The air was thick with dust, and the wooden floor groaned beneath each step. Cobwebs clung to every corner, and old furniture sat draped under white sheets like forgotten ghosts. As he rummaged through boxes filled with faded photo albums and broken holiday decorations, something caught his eye. An old wooden chest in the far corner, partially hidden beneath a tattered quilt. It had no lock, but it felt wrong to open it. Still, curiosity always outweighed caution in Daniel's heart. Inside, he found letters. Dozens of them, bundled with faded ribbon. Some were addressed to a name he didn't recognize, to Clara, from M. But one letter stood out. It had no return address. No stamp. Just a name written in a shaky hand, for Daniel. To be opened when you are ready. The envelope was thick, sealed with red wax. His hands trembled as he broke the seal. Inside was a single page, neatly written in the same cursive script. It began simply, "Daniel, my darling son." He stopped reading. The words were wrong. Off. Why would she write this and hide it here? The letter went on to say things that made no sense. Phrases like, "when you were brought to me and I had no choice but to protect you from the truth." It spoke of danger, of people watching, of a promise made in desperation. And then the final lines, burned into his brain like a brand. "You were never supposed to know. But if you're reading this, then the time has come." He sat there for what felt like hours, the letter gripped tightly in his hands, the silence around him growing louder with every heartbeat. What had she meant by "brought to me"? Who had been watching them? What truth was she hiding? He slipped the letter into his pocket and went downstairs, trying to act normal. But his mother's face gave her away. She was in the kitchen, humming softly, chopping vegetables. But the moment she looked up and saw his expression, her hand froze mid-air. The knife clattered to the counter. "You've been in the attic," she said. Her voice didn't rise, but it lost all warmth. Daniel nodded slowly. "I found a letter." Her face went pale. For the first time in his life, Daniel saw fear in his mother's eyes. Not the kind of fear you get from a loud noise or a bad dream, but something deeper. Older. Like it had been sleeping beneath her skin for years. She didn't ask which letter. She didn't ask what it said. She just whispered, almost to herself, it wasn't supposed to happen yet. That night, the house felt different. Colder. Quieter. Daniel couldn't sleep. His thoughts twisted around themselves like vines. He needed answers, But every time he opened his mouth to ask, something inside told him to wait. To watch. To listen. Over the next few days, he noticed more things. How she always kept the curtains drawn tight at night. How she triple-locked the doors even in broad daylight. How there were no baby pictures of him in the house. Only photos from when he was about 3 years old and up. He began to look at her differently. Like she was a stranger wearing a familiar mask. One afternoon, he returned from school early and caught her in the study. She didn't hear him at first. She was on the phone, her voice low, hurried. "I told you, he found it," she said. "No, I don't know how long we have. I need more time. He's just a boy." A pause. "Yes, I understand. I'll prepare him. Just, don't come here. Not yet." Daniel backed away before she could see him. That night, he confronted her. "Who was on the phone?" he asked, standing stiff in the hallway, fists clenched. She didn't lie. Not directly. She just said, "Someone from the past. Someone I hoped you'd never have to know." "What did you mean when you wrote I was brought to you?" Clara sat down, her shoulders slumping. For the first time in years, she looked old. Not in age, but in weariness. Like she'd been carrying something far heavier than Daniel had ever realized. "There are things about you, Daniel," she said slowly, "that I couldn't explain when you were younger. Things I barely understood myself. And now that the door's open, I can't close it again." He waited. She stared at the fireplace, as if trying to summon the right words from the flickering shadows. "You're not who you think you are," she said. Daniel's mouth went dry. She reached into the drawer beside the couch and pulled out a small box. Inside was a necklace, black stone, strung on silver wire, and a torn photograph. A woman with his eyes and a man he didn't recognize. "That's your real mother," she whispered. And just like that, the world Daniel knew began to crack. Daniel couldn't tear his eyes away from the photo. The woman stared back at him through time. Dark eyes like his, the same high cheekbones, the same crooked smile. She looked young, not much older than Clara was now. But something about her expression unsettled him. It was distant, almost haunted. And standing beside her was a man. Tall, lean, with sharp features and a gaze that didn't look at the camera but past it, as if watching something else. Something just out of frame. Clara handed him the necklace next. The black stone was cold against his skin, and the silver wire coiled like it had a pulse of its own. "She wore this every day," Clara said. "It was the only thing she left behind for you." Daniel's voice trembled. "Why did she leave me?" Clara looked down. Her silence stretched out, thin and fragile. "She didn't leave you," she said finally. "She died." Daniel's breath caught. "When?" Clara hesitated. "The day I found you." He shook his head. "Found me?" "I was working at the time, in a safe house," she said. "For women escaping things, bad things. Your mother came in late one night. Her name was Elira. She didn't have much with her, just that necklace, you, and a journal I was never able to decode. She was terrified. She said people were after her, that they wanted you." Daniel's mind reeled. "I called the authorities," Clara continued. "But before anyone could help her, she disappeared. We found her body the next morning in the woods behind the center. No sign of a struggle. Just gone. Like the life had been drained from her." Daniel clutched the photo. "And no one looked for her killer." "They said it was exposure. That she wandered off. But I knew better. I'd seen the look in her eyes. She wasn't just afraid, she was hunted." Clara leaned closer. "And I knew then, I couldn't let them find you." Daniel stared at her, his chest tight. "Who's them?" She opened her mouth to answer, but a sharp knock at the door interrupted her. 3 short raps. Precise. Hollow. Clara froze. She stood slowly, moving toward the front window and peering through the blinds. Her body went rigid. She turned to Daniel, her voice low and urgent. "Go to the basement. Don't speak. Don't make a sound." "Who is it?" She didn't answer. She grabbed a bag from behind the couch, already packed, and shoved it into his arms. Go. Now. Daniel hesitated, but something in her eyes made him move. He rushed down the narrow hallway, heart pounding as he opened the creaking basement door and slipped inside. It was pitch black. He stumbled down the stairs, nearly dropping the bag, and crouched behind a pile of old boxes. The silence above was deafening. Then came the voices. Not loud. Not angry. Calm. Too calm. A man's voice. We know she's here, Clara. There's no point pretending anymore. Clara's voice was steady but tight. He doesn't know anything. He's just a boy. Even more reason to take him now. Before it begins. Daniel's blood ran cold. Before what begins? The man spoke again. You've done well, considering. 10 years off the radar. No small feat, but you knew it couldn't last forever. I won't let you take him, Clara said. You don't have a choice. Then silence. And a sound Daniel couldn't place. A low hum, like electricity charging through the air. Suddenly, the lights in the basement flickered. A single bulb burst above him, showering sparks. Then, nothing. Just dark. Daniel held his breath. His pulse pounded in his ears. He waited for footsteps, for the door to open, for something. But all he heard was the wind howling outside. Finally, after what felt like hours, the basement door creaked open. Clara appeared, pale and shaking. They are gone, for now, she whispered. Daniel climbed up the steps, gripping the railing. What did they mean? He demanded. Before it begins? What's happening to me? Clara closed the door behind him. She looked exhausted. Old. She didn't speak until they sat down at the kitchen table again. The same table where she'd once taught him how to spell his name in cookies. Now it felt like a war council. You were born under a mark, she said. A sign older than blood or name. She pulled out a small, leather-bound journal from the same bag. The pages were filled with symbols Daniel didn't recognize. Circles within circles, strange letters, sketches of constellations, and diagrams of bodies wrapped in light. This was your mother's. I've spent years trying to decipher it. I only understand fragments. But there's one thing I'm certain of. She looked at him, her eyes filled with something between fear and awe. You're not just different, Daniel. You're marked. Marked for what? She shook her head. I don't know. Power? A curse? I've heard whispers, stories. Children like you are rare. And the people who want you, they don't want you alive. They want what's inside you. Daniel felt sick. He looked down at the necklace. It pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Why now? He asked. Why are they coming now, after all this time? Because something is waking up, Clara said. And you're the key. They sat in silence for a long moment. Daniel's whole world had changed in less than a week. Everything he believed about his mother, about himself, about the quiet little life they had built, was unraveling. And deep down, he knew it wasn't over. This was just the beginning. The pages felt heavier now. Daniel turned them slowly, one after another, careful not to tear the fragile paper. His mother, his real mother, had written in languages he didn't understand, drawing strange symbols that twisted and shifted in the candlelight. It was like the book didn't want to be read until it was ready. Clara stood behind him, arms folded tightly across her chest, watching every movement. These markings, Daniel said, his voice low, they're not random. They're not, Clara replied. They're part of a code, or a ritual. I've tried for years to translate them, cross-reference them with ancient texts, mythologies, even cryptographic systems. But they're written in something older than language. Daniel flipped to a page near the center of the book. It had a symbol drawn in thick black ink, an eye, surrounded by jagged lines and encased in a triangle. Beneath it were the words, "When the eye opens, the sky will crack." Daniel's chest tightened. What does that mean? I don't know. But the same symbol appeared once, on a man who came looking for you. Daniel looked up. Clara's face was pale. He wore it around his neck. Said he was from the Order. That he was here to take you back. I convinced him you weren't here. That you'd been moved. What happened to him? Her voice dropped. He disappeared. 2 days later, they found his body in the river. Daniel's hands trembled as he closed the book. Why me? He whispered. Why would anyone go to all this trouble? Clara sat across from him, eyes sharp. Because something ancient is inside you. Power. A bloodline that goes back farther than I can trace. You were born under the eclipse of 3 moons, a convergence that happens once every 1,000 years. The last time it happened, legends say a child was born who could open the veil. The veil. Between worlds, she said. Between what we see and what we're not meant to. Daniel stared at her, stunned. Clara leaned in. Your mother, Elira, was running from the Order. They believed she betrayed them. That she was hiding you because you were the prophecy they were trying to stop. Daniel's breath came fast and shallow. This is insane, he muttered. I know, Clara said. But you've seen the signs, haven't you? The shadows that move when no one's there? The way lights flicker when you're upset? The dreams. Daniel froze. How do you know about the dreams? Clara's eyes softened. Because I had them, too, when I took you in. He stood abruptly, pushing the chair back. The room felt smaller, tighter, the air heavy with secrets that should never have been spoken aloud. I need to get out of here. He stormed to the front door, flung it open, and stopped. The sky was bleeding. A line of crimson split the horizon like a wound, glowing against the deep blue of early dusk. Clouds churned unnaturally. The trees were still. Too still. He stepped outside slowly. The world felt wrong. And then he heard it. A hum. Faint at first, like a tuning fork vibrating in the air around him. Then stronger. Deeper. It made the ground tremble beneath his feet. He turned to Clara, who had followed him onto the porch. What's happening? She didn't answer. Because she didn't need to. Daniel looked down at the necklace around his neck. The black stone pulsed brighter now, alive, responding to something. The hum grew louder. The clouds began to spiral. A shape formed above, too large to comprehend, like something crawling beneath the fabric of the sky itself. Clara grabbed his arm. It started, she said. They found you. From the woods, dark figures emerged, cloaked, silent. They moved like shadows given form, each bearing the same triangle mark on their robes. Daniel stepped back. Inside, Clara said. Now. They ran into the house and locked every door. But the shadows didn't try to break in. Instead, they stood still, surrounding the house like sentinels. Watching. Waiting. Daniel sat on the floor, breathless. The hum now resonated inside his chest. He looked down at the journal in his lap. The symbols on the pages shimmered faintly, glowing for the first time. Clara kneeled beside him. They're not here to kill you. Not yet. Then what do they want? To awaken you, she said. To make you one of them. The words landed like stones in his stomach. But I'm not like them, he whispered. I'm not. His voice trailed off. Because somewhere deep inside, past the fear and disbelief, he knew she was right. He wasn't like everyone else. And now, whatever was sleeping inside him, was waking up. The wind had gone silent. The kind of silence that screamed louder than any sound. Outside Clara's home, the figures still stood motionless, cloaked in darkness, their eyes hidden but somehow felt. Daniel sat by the fireplace, the journal open in his lap, its symbols now glowing a dim, otherworldly silver. He could feel the hum rising in his bones, threading through his bloodstream like electricity. Clara lit candles around the room. The lights no longer worked. The moment the red line split the sky, the house had disconnected from the rest of the world. No signal. No power. Nothing. They're not just watching anymore, Clara said, glancing toward the window. They're waiting for you to choose. Choose what? Daniel asked. His voice cracked. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask to be marked. No, she said softly, but you were born into it. That necklace, the journal, it's all part of the awakening. The convergence begins tonight, and you're at the center of it. Daniel shook his head. I don't even know what it is. Clara moved closer, kneeling in front of him. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the book. Long ago, she began. Before stories were written and history was carved into stone, there were gates, veils between this world and another. Some say it was a world of spirits. Others say it was chaos itself. But once, a group of people known only as the Watchers were entrusted with the keys to those veils. She turned the journal to a page depicting a series of moons, all aligned in a perfect row above a mountain. They passed the keys through bloodlines. Only a child born during the triple eclipse, like you, could unlock them. Daniel looked down at his hands, as if expecting to see something change. So, I'm supposed to open a gate to another world. Clara's eyes darkened. No, that's what they want. But if you do, it won't be just a door you're opening. It'll be them. Daniel's pulse quickened. Then why not destroy it? The book? The necklace? I've tried. Fire, acid, even burial in consecrated ground. Nothing touches them. Whatever power your mother placed in these things, it's protected. Clara stood, her silhouette flickering against the candlelight. You have one chance. If you resist tonight, if we can keep them from completing the ritual, they'll lose you. For now. Daniel swallowed hard. What ritual? She turned to him slowly. They're going to try to bind you. Call forth your full potential under the convergence. That's why they're waiting. They can't enter until the eclipse completes. Daniel looked at the clock. The second hand was stuck, frozen at 3:13 a.m. He checked his watch. Same thing. Outside, the stars dimmed. Suddenly, a low boom echoed from deep within the forest. Not thunder. A pulse. The ground shook gently beneath them. The candles flickered violently. They're starting, Clara whispered. Daniel ran to the window. A column of red light had burst into the sky from the tree line, spiraling like a beacon. The figures raised their arms in unison. A wind tore through the yard, swirling leaves and ash into a vortex. The house creaked like it was under pressure. A groan rolled through the floorboards. We have to go, Clara said. We can't stay here. But wait. Daniel asked, panic rising. They're everywhere. There's a place. Your mother marked it on the last page of the journal. A sanctuary, the last one. She grabbed the book, flipping to the back. There was a drawing, a crumbling chapel in the woods, surrounded by 5 pillars, each with a different rune carved into the stone. Daniel stared at it. I've seen that place before. Clara turned to him, startled. Way! In my dreams. I always thought it was just a nightmare. But I remember the door. It was sealed shut with chains. And there was a voice telling me not to open it. She nodded. Then we don't open it. We just get there before they do. They packed quickly, flashlights that no longer worked, a map Clara had kept since the day she found Elira, the journal, and the necklace that now pulsed every few seconds with a dull glow. Outside, the shadows parted for them. They didn't chase, didn't scream, didn't move. They simply watched. Daniel and Clara entered the woods. The trees seemed taller now, gnarled and moving slightly as if whispering to one another. The red light pulsed from deeper within. With each step, Daniel felt the pull grow stronger, like something was calling to him. Not with words, but with memory. A memory that wasn't his, yet lived in his blood. They walked for nearly 20 minutes before they reached it. The chapel was exactly as the journal had drawn. Half collapsed, cloaked in ivy, with 5 pillars in a semicircle before the entrance. Each pillar bore a symbol from the journal, each one glowing faintly as Daniel approached. The door was chained shut. But not for long. As Daniel stepped forward, the necklace around his neck grew hot. Wait, Clara said sharply. Don't touch it yet. But Daniel was already moving. He reached the pillar with the eye symbol. The chain rattled. The wind died. And then, he heard her voice. His mother's. Daniel. It wasn't spoken aloud, but it echoed in his head like a song he'd long forgotten. He turned to Clara. I heard her. My mom. Clara didn't blink. They're using her. Don't listen. But Daniel couldn't turn away. The journal in Clara's hands began to shake, pages turning furiously before stopping on a blank one. And slowly, letter by letter, new writing appeared. The veil thins. Blood will decide. Daniel stared at the words. Behind them, the trees began to groan. A sound like cracking bones rose through the forest. The eclipse had begun. And deep inside, Daniel could feel something opening. The sky was split in half. Above the chapel ruins, a perfect circle of shadow devoured the moon, turning the forest into a world of ash and crimson. The eclipse had arrived. The final convergence was happening, and Daniel was its epicenter. He stood before the chained chapel door, the necklace burning against his chest, the journal now unreadable in Clara's trembling hands. The 5 pillars around them glowed brighter with every passing second, symbols pulsing like heartbeats. Daniel could feel his blood responding, surging, waking up to something it had waited for all his life. Clara grabbed his shoulder. You need to stop, she said, her voice urgent. You're feeding it. Daniel shook his head slowly, eyes locked on the chapel. I can feel her, Clara. My mother. She's inside. No, Clara said firmly. That's not her. It's them. They're using her voice, memories twisted into a trap. He turned to her. But what if it's not? Clara stepped in front of the door, arms out. Then we find another way. But once those chains are broken, it's over. You open that door, and the veil between this world and the next collapses. Daniel's hands trembled. The necklace was glowing white-hot now, searing his skin. The wind around them stilled again. Then came the chanting. Soft at first, like distant echoes from the trees. The shadowy figures had followed. They stood beyond the ruins now, encircling the chapel, their voices rising in a language Daniel couldn't comprehend but somehow understood. They were summoning him. The door vibrated. Cracks spread through the wood. Daniel stumbled back. I can't hold it in anymore. Clara opened the journal again. There's still time. There's a passage here. A ritual. If we bind the necklace to the earth, to the place your mother chose, we may be able to seal you again. Daniel fell to his knees, teeth clenched in pain. What happens to me if we do? Clara's face twisted with grief. You'll forget. Everything. Me. Her. All of it. The powers. The truth. It'll be like this night never happened. He looked up at her, eyes glowing faintly with silver light. And if we don't? Clara didn't answer. But they both knew. The door creaked open, just a crack. And through that crack, Daniel saw it. A figure, tall and robed in shifting shadows, with a face that mirrored his own. Not entirely human. Not entirely anything. It was like looking into a mirror warped by time and other worlds. It smiled. Daniel gasped, stumbling back. What is that? The first, Clara whispered. The being your bloodline comes from. They've been trying to return for centuries. The necklace pulsed, then cracked. A thread of silver light poured from it into Daniel's chest. He screamed. The sky rumbled. The chapel door blew open, with splintering into dust. The figure stepped forward, graceful, horrifying, elegant in its corruption. But then, it stopped, and looked at Daniel with something like respect. You are more than prophecy, it said. Its voice wasn't a sound. It was a feeling, a storm behind the eyes. You are choice. Daniel's breath hitched. The figure raised its hand. Let me awaken you, and you will never feel fear again. Clara moved between them. Don't listen to it. Daniel stared at the creature. Then at Clara. Then at the journal, its pages now glowing white with heat. And he knew what he had to do. Slowly, painfully, he tore the necklace from his chest. The chain snapped. The stone dropped to the earth. The ground trembled. No, the being hissed. You would forsake your birthright. Daniel looked it in the eyes. I would rather be human. He stepped back. Clara flipped to the final page of the journal. Together, they chanted the words written there, foreign, raw, ancient. The pillars flared like stars, sending beams of light into the sky. The wind howled. The trees bent backward. The being shrieked. And then, it began to unravel. First its face, then its limbs, then its voice, swallowed by the light. The chapel imploded into itself, the ground swallowing it whole, sealing the gate. The eclipse faded. The red sky turned dark again. Silence returned. Daniel collapsed, unconscious. 1 week later, Daniel sat at the kitchen table, stirring his cereal absently. Clara moved around the kitchen, humming to herself. The TV played a soft news story in the background. Strange atmospheric events last week remain unexplained, though experts assure the public there is no cause for concern. He rubbed the spot where the necklace once rested. There was no scar, no mark, nothing. Clara, he asked. Yes, sweetie. Did we used to live somewhere else? Like, near a forest? Clara froze for half a second, then smiled gently. No, Daniel. You've always lived here. He nodded slowly, though something still tugged at the back of his mind. A sound. A voice. A dream he couldn't quite remember. Outside, the wind rustled the trees. And beneath the floorboards, in a locked box Clara would never open again, the journal remained, silent. But not